was. So I know that's a lot. It's a huge amount of information. There's so much more that I could talk about. I recommend Richard Pite's book, A Concise History of the Russian Revolution. I do not recommend Edgar Poe's book on this subject, so don't read that. It's not Edgar Poe, Allan Poe's subject on it. See, I think it's Allan. Yeah, he wrote a book about it, and I did not care for it. Neil Faulkner's People's History of the Russian Revolution, Sheila Fitzpatrick's The Russian Revolution, Sean McKean's book, The History of the Russian Revolution. These are all extremely good. If you want a primary source, read the famous book Reds by John Reed, where he basically the 10 Days That Changed the World, where he basically turned into the movie Reds, where he basically glorifies the Russian Revolution and everything Bolshevik and Marxist. So I know a lot about these. I have direct sources that I can reference rather than just a general knowledge. So that's why I know the ins and outs of it a little bit more. And this is a good preview of my short series that is coming out about the history of Russia that will be debuting later this week as I finish the Qing Dynasty, my last video on China. And then I'm going to be doing the Russian history. So we're going to start with Rurik and the Vikings, and you're going to learn about a little bit about the Tsars, but more deal about Russian society, and of course the Bolsheviks and the Soviet Union will be included in this. By the way, Stalin was involved in this activity during the Russian Revolution. He had originally wanted to be a priest. I could do an entire live stream lecture about Stalin next if you want. But next weekend, I know my promise to Harsonet, I'm doing the War on Terror. So we go from one terrifying situation to another. So anyways, yes, we are just over an hour in. I thought that was going to be 20 minutes. But there's just so much history here. It's just so fascinating to me. I hope it's fascinating to you. If you really enjoyed it, like and subscribe. I love Russia. I love all things Russian. And I love Russian history. And I think that probably came out a lot here. I mean, I love all types of history, but this one kind of goes. And unfortunately, Caleb, you are a little bit on the late side. I'm finishing up my lecture on the Russian Revolution and the century of revolution that led Russia to becoming the Soviet Union, the first communist state in the world, which was quickly followed up by Mongolia in 1922, the second communist state in the world. But yes. And yes, this is St. Basil's Cathedral, my background, and this is, of course, Red Square in the Kremlin, the seat of Russian government. So yeah. Yeah. But, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm going to stay on for a few more minutes, where if you guys want, if you have a question about history or social studies, the Russian Revolution, Russia, I'd be happy to answer that, just as a little bonus for you guys, because we've had a nice discussion. This is a lot of fun. Excuse me. And yes, Green Hitpo, Russia is where the Orthodox Church is. And the Orthodox Church goes through all of this, by the way, and the Bolsheviks basically steal gold and silver out of the Orthodox churches to start paying for their collectivized farming and forced industrialization. Can we talk the Mediterranean, though? What do you want to know about it? It's not actually Kremlin, it's Russian Historical. That's right, it's the Russian Historical Museum. Who is the person talking? Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I got a question about Voldemort. How was he defeated? I don't know. By the power of Harry Potter's magic. Oh, someone was asking, if Nighthawk was asking, why England betrayed Poland in 1939. It's an interesting thing. You asked it with Harry in the room, and Harry's going to make sure that England gets its protections. But Great Britain did not betray Poland. In fact, Great Britain had betrayed Czechoslovakia, then decided not to betray Poland and got involved in the war. What shocked Britain and France was who I was just talking about, the Soviet Union, and Joseph Stalin siding with their Nazi enemies to divide up Poland, because authoritarians, at the end of the day, end up being the same. And I might have been called a Nazi yesterday, but the truth of the matter is I'm not an authoritarian, so Allah, I'm not a Nazi, a communist, or a fascist. At the end of the day, the political spectrum, I'm starting to think, is a horseshoe. Instead of right-wing, left-wing, it's left-wing, right-wing, and then the moderates. But you notice how these are really close to each other, because at the most extreme ends, they bend towards each other. So Hitler was a socialist. He called himself a socialist. Mussolini was a disenfranchised socialist. The guy who created fascism as a doctrine, I forget his name, he's an Italian philosopher. He was a Marxist. These guys were all piggybacking off of the same ideas, which is the state should control your life in one way or another. So let me see here. Just going through the chat. So Nighthawk, that's what I think there.